Hello, and welcome to This Week in the Universe. I'm Solaris, and this week we're joined by the master alchemist himself, Doc Redfang.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course, and for the unfortunate souls who have yet to see you, how would you describe yourself and your content?
So my goal is usually to create a very comfy stream. I play a lot of relatively chill games, Pokemon Snap, Final Fantasy Theatrhythm, and I just want to kind of have a nice, relaxing atmosphere for people to come and hang out in. That said, I'd say my Monster Hunter streams are a little bit more high energy, a little bit more chaotic, so we do break the mold once in a while.
Nice. Yeah, I know the Monster Hunter streams definitely seem, especially recently, you've been comparing carts against your mods, which I don't know. I guess you can probably explain that better than I
Yes.
can.
Yeah, so carts are the I guess technical term for dying during a mission in Monster Hunter. And so I recently set up a cart tracker on the overlay, and we do a prediction each week now for chat to kind of bet on how many times we'll cart during the stream to add a little bit more interaction and stuff into it. And the mods have definitely made it a little competitive as a result of it actually being tracked. So that's added some more energy to it.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely. The reason I brought that up is because it seemed to add a competitive edge to the normally the chill streams. Some other stuff
Definitely.
I've noticed you've been playing lately is you're still doing the Disco Elysium playthrough. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So that's been a few weeks of that, and it's a little heavier content wise. It's not quite as chill within the game itself, but I still feel like the atmosphere around it as we play it is still fairly relaxed, though there are definitely some characters in there that kind of push the envelope on me keeping my chill.
I mean, that's what makes good content, though, right? Like, I kind of have the same problem where, like, I feel like sometimes I might be too chill.
Right. So that definitely helps me break out a little bit there. And the going back to the Monster Hunter streams a little bit more, the other nice thing about them is we've been able to cycle through a few guest VTubers and get to know them and
Nice.
get to connect and collab a bit through the Monster Hunter streams. And those each person brings their own energy to that too. So each of those streams gets a little bit of a different feel to it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way of doing it. If you have like a core group, but then you rotate like one of the members out, you get a new dynamic every time, but you still have those mainstays that keep people coming back.
Definitely. And I feel like in the collabs I've been in on other people's streams, I try to match their energy, so I'm a little less chill. Like I've gone in to Oreo the scientist, and she's just pure chaos. So I was just all chaos on her stream, and it was very different feel from a lot of mine. But it's a lot of fun to you know dabble outside of the usual and give people another side of myself to enjoy.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just picturing people like watching that collab first, and then they come to your channel and they're like, "Wow, this is a completely different person. This is what I subscribed for."
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think my favorite one so far was with Tea Leaf and Aster Veritolis. We played through the first few hours of Chrono Trigger and voice acted it.
Nice.
And um, we didn't really plan who was voicing who. And it was all kind of improv on the fly, finding what voices. And it was just so much fun. And it seemed to go over really well. So I'd love to do some more of that sort of stuff.
Nice. Yeah. So, have you just kind of related to that? Have you done any voice acting work before, or is voice acting something that you're interested in, or was it just kind of an on the fly, let's do this thing?
It's something I have kind of like done little voiceovers for friends that make short films or things like that here and there. It's not something I've really done professionally, but I love the idea of kind of dabbling in it and doing some work down the line, either recordings for other VTubers or more like globally professionally getting some work in voice acting. It's something I've always enjoyed doing, and I do some in my day job as well as a professor, because I talk about all sorts of communication disorders. And so my quote unquote background in voice acting from dabbling lets me kind of replicate some of the disorders in the classroom for the
Oh wow,
students.
that's really impressive. Yeah, I see. My main problem with voice acting is that I can't do like different voices. I can do my voice, and that is it. Is the
So,
is there some kind of secret to doing multiple different voices?
ooh, that's a really good question. It's something my growing up, my dad did a lot of just weird voices and stuff like that, and I just kind of learned through mimicry. And then in my training in grad school, it was very weird. It was learn how to do these things, and then in grad school, I ended up learning what I was actually doing to make the voices. So, which definitely helped getting more control over them.
Nice. That's yeah. I like that. It's like you figured out how to do it before you actually knew how to do it.
Yeah. So it's a lot of um, playing with different pitches and like tongue placement and jaw placement to change kind of the way sound echoes in your mouth as you're talking.
Hmm, interesting. I know it was probably a little while back now, but it just reminded me of some people. I think it might have been your chat or it might have been Twitter. They were talking about having you read audiobooks. Is that content that you'd still be interested in doing?
Absolutely. I'm it's one of those things as far as like future plans. I'd love to do some audiobook readings. I've got to figure out some good options to start with. You know, nothing too long just to make sure to test the waters. But that's one of the things once I get my live 2D model up and running that I'd love to make little YouTube videos of audiobooks and stuff like that.
Nice. So you mentioned live 2D model. Do you know if you have like a timeline on that, or I think you mentioned it's coming soon?
Yeah, so the art for it is all done. It's been sent off to the rigger at this point. The unfortunate part about not being much of an artist myself is I'm at the whims of commissions for getting these sorts of things done. So once the rigger is done with it, I'll be able to spend some time getting used to running it. And I have some ideas for pre-debut content that I want to prep with it. And so I'm hoping I don't have a formal date yet, but I'm hoping that in the next couple of months I can officially debut the model.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. I know. I guess kind of related to that, I'm curious to get your kind of opinions on how do I phrase this, like VTuber debut culture? Because you've been streaming for quite a
Mhm.
while now, and you're probably going to be streaming, like you said, for a couple months before you actually finally debut the Live 2D model. So I'm interested. Do you like? What do you think is best? Do you have an opinion on what's best? Do you think it matters? That kind of those that kind of stuff.
Ooh. So I'm very thankful that I started as a PNG tuber and I could kind of feel out the strengths and weaknesses in my stream before I debuted and really made a big deal of it. I think it's given me a lot more flexibility kind of within my own head. Like a lot of people once they debut, they feel they're kind of locked in. And I think debut culture itself is fun. I think it's really interesting, but a lot of people run the risk of making the debut the goal and not really having a plan going forward past that. And so they kind of hit that high of their debut and then they just kind of kind of hold uh or worst case scenario kind of stagnate content wise and they don't really have a plan to grow from that point on. um And when I was starting out, I was definitely kind of in that mindset of the debut being a big deal. And I feel like now I want it more to be just kind of a, hey, check it out. Here's the live 2D model. Let's celebrate that we got that milestone. But that's just, one quick stop on the long term path for streaming.
Yeah, I like that because I was kind of similar in the sense that like I wanted my debut, or I actually ended up calling it more of an introduction because I was streaming, like you was streaming before I actually like did my quote unquote debut, and
Hmm.
I wanted it to be more of a like celebration to just like this is something fun. I'll kind of go over what I'm all about, but this is just the beginning. This isn't the end goal. Kind of like what you were saying. You did mention earlier in that about being locked in, and that made me kind of curious. Have you ever considered a rebrand? Not saying that you should. I'm just saying, like, I know a lot of YouTubers, especially the ones that I see on Twitter, constantly seem like they're changing their brand.
So, um, I don't have a rebrand, but something that will kind of come out in my lore as we head into the debut is that there's more to Doc than just the alchemy. Um, and I've hinted at it here and there in Twitter, and I don't know if anybody's really picked up on it. So while I'm not, and this has been part of the plan kind of since the beginning when I was first constructing the lore. Um, there's not necessarily a rebrand to it, but there's kind of more than just chill Doc down the line.
So different elements that you can kind of sprinkle into the base character. I like that. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I've kind of
So
had
one.
go.
Oh, sorry. Um, so yeah, as far as that whole locked in thing at the debut, when I was writing the lore, I kind of wanted to make sure I gave myself room for those sorts of flexibilities.
Nice. Yeah, what I was gonna say is just like when I was first coming up with the idea of Solaris, I had this vision of being able to change colors like on the fly because I mean there's obviously the
Mm-hmm.
classic big yellow star, but I also wanted to be able to be like a red star or a blue star, and that's still potentially down the future. And I was thinking about maybe doing like having that be reflective of personality changes. But I like that a lot more than the idea of like completely changing the character. Not that there's anything
Yeah,
wrong with people that want to rebrand. I mean, that's totally understandable. But
absolutely. I think some people, the rebrand really helps them if they feel locked in with their content, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think it lets them exercise other facets of creativity as they do it.
absolutely. So I guess kind of related to this is how did you decide on Master Alchemy? Did you just like know that right from the start, or was there a process involved?
So I'm a big fan of the Atelier series, and I really um I've played through most of them since the PS3 era, and I've always enjoyed the world building in the Atelier games, and so I wanted to kind of build a character that could slot into that world, and that was kind of the main impetus behind the Master Alchemist
Nice.
persona.
Um, Kind of related to that, I guess, would be first of all, for those that don't know, could you explain what an atelier is? And then also, could you talk about the atelier games a little bit for people that might not know about the series?
Absolutely. So atelier is just a fancy name for a workshop, and in this case, specifically an alchemist's workshop. And the Atelier series is a long-running JRPG series that um, is based around mostly female protagonists that are all alchemists, and they each have their own like reason to go out in the world and study alchemy and become a master alchemist. Some of them, like Toturi, is on a mission to find her mother. Um, in those in the Dusk trilogy are trying to figure out how to stop like a massive drought or the end of the world. Um, which, as a side note, the one of my favorite localization, like naming kind of Easter eggs, comes from the Dusk trilogy of Atelier, Eska, and Logi, um, which the Japanese name is Eskatology, and eschatology is the study of the end of the world.
Oh wow, that's That's big brain.
So, right, when I realized that, I was like, A plus. This is like the the best like name Easter egg I've ever seen.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because I like it's funny because I never would have picked up on that. Like even if I would have somebody on Reddit would have had to explain this to me. um kind of so going back to kind of the original of being inspired to be an alchemist, was there a specific, I guess you kind of already mentioned what, but was there a specific other VTuber or just a streamer or person that inspired you to be a VTuber?
So my trip down the VTuber rabbit hole, I saw some Kazuna Eye stuff. I didn't really grasp that that was like VTubing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. And then eventually I stumbled on some of Kiryu Coco's content. And then the YouTube algorithm kind of took me down the path from Coco to, I think it was probably Iron Mouse to, and then back into
Interesting jump.
Hololive with Corone and Aki Rose. Um, and then probably my first introduction within kind of the more indie VTuber community was probably Jusagi.
Okay. Yeah. I've definitely heard of Jisagi. I don't think I've actually watched any of their content as far as I can remember. But man, there was a lot. Okay, there was a lot in there I wanted to jump on. So first, you
Absolutely.
mentioned Coco, of course, and now that that's been brought up, I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't
Mhm.
immediately talk a little bit about Coco's graduation and
Yeah.
the announcement that shocked the world in the last week. Um, Huge
Yeah.
inspiration to a lot of YouTubers, I guess. Yeah, just do you have any thoughts on that?
It was out of the blue. Like I was kind of expecting the graduation to come a while back when the antis were kind of at their worst. And then I thought we had kind of made it into steady state. So it coming now was really pretty shocking. I figured, especially with the growth of Hololive EN, she would probably stick around and start collaborating with them more and help build out kind of the English branches more. So seeing her decide to go for whatever reason, um, whether it's the antis, whether she has some bigger plan down the line, kind of came out of the blue to me.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. I mean, admittedly, these days I mostly only watch clips just because I don't have as much time to watch the full
Mhm.
streams. But it definitely, like, one of my friends actually sent me the news about Coco's graduation announcement, and I was just like, wow. And then looking into it a little bit, as a viewer, I definitely agree. It seems like it's out of the blue, but you can kind of also see the trend because there's been a huge uptick in her collabs over the past like month. People were pointing out, and I
Yeah.
think it was kind of a behind the scenes. Like she'd already kind of been telling people that, hey, I'm going to be leaving in July 1st. And I guess now that I think about it, probably should have started with this part, but for anybody who doesn't have context on what we're talking about right now, Kiryu Coco, one of the biggest members of Hololive, a giant VTuber corporation, or I guess idol agency as part of Cover Corp, she announced that she was graduating, and then graduating in VTuber terms is essentially retiring. Um, and she's the first, well, not technically the first one to graduate from Hololive, but the first one who is, leaving after having been streaming for a long time. There are a couple other graduations, but those were kind of special circumstances.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So Coco with Coco is definitely a big surprise. I'm glad she's finally getting to collab with EN because I know there was a lot of talk about how she was kept separate from all of the EN talent for a long time. So I'm glad
Yeah.
she's getting to do that before graduation at least.
Yeah, I don't want to say spread too much, like go into the rumor territory too much, but I remember that because the rumor was that she didn't want to attract anti attention to the EN branch while it was still just taking off. So that was the rumor as to why she wasn't really collabing with EN. But yes, it's definitely been very cool to see her do that. I think actually just today she did a meme review with Ame, and it had, I think when I scrolled by it on YouTube, it had like 80,000 viewers.
Oh man. Yeah, I
Um,
want to go back and actually get to watch that one because that'll be interesting. Getting Coco and Ame's gremlin self together.
yeah, it might have been yesterday. Now that I'm thinking about it, but it was definitely recent. But yeah, that's got to be some crazy energy. And thinking about that does also make me think so she's graduating officially on July 1st, and that stream is gonna be insane. Like content wise, I'm sure it's gonna be crazy too. But I'm just thinking like viewership numbers and probably super chats, and like I feel like that stream is gonna break some records.
Oh yeah. Well, she's also already like one of the highest grossing, like as far as super chats, like
Right?
talents on YouTube. So I can't imagine what's going to happen for her graduation stream.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess we're kind of going back to before, so that's enough Coco talk. We can stop being sad now. But going back to just kind of Hololive in general, my introduction to Hololive was Hololive EN, which I guess that was a question I wanted to ask. Did you happen to find Coco before the EN branch, or was that actually after?
It was probably a month or so before the Ian branch was announced.
Okay,
So I
gotcha.
had stumbled into some clips a little bit beforehand.
Sucked into the rabbit hole. Yeah, EN was the rabbit hole for me, and then I kind of slowly expanded out from there. I was gonna I was kind of curious about the whole the Kiryu Hoko to Iron Mouse jump. Was that just a clip jump, or was
That was a YouTube algorithm down the rabbit
decision?
hole.
Gotcha. I was
Showed
gonna
me
say,
Iron Mouse. And
uh,
then Iron Mouse was probably the one I first started watching live on Twitch as a result.
gotcha. Kind of related to that is just I'm curious to kind of get your opinion. So you mentioned um, indies and obviously we're talking about Hololive. I'm kind of curious what your opinion is at this point on like VTuber agencies versus VTuber indies. Not saying like you need to say which one is better or worse, but I'm just kind of curious in your opinions on like the differences being an indie yourself.
I think that having agencies is great. I think they promote a lot of visibility for VTubing as kind of its own medium. And it stretches the reach of for all of us. It's one of those, rising tides lifts all boats sort of situations.
Yeah,
Um, I think the the benefits of being an indie are, you know, related to having more flexibility, being able to really decide your own collabs, and if you're chasing if you want to pursue certain sponsorships, it's easier to do as an indie. Um, whereas other sponsorships, probably bigger names, it's easier to do with an agency from a business and financial standpoint, which not all of us are necessarily in this for profit. And there's still a very large section of the community that's hobbyist. And so that independent scene definitely allows for a lot more of those hobbyists too.
yeah, definitely. Um, like I would say, it's funny because I think most people would agree that if they could do this full time, they would take it, but they
Oh,
just don't have
absolutely.
the ability to at the moment. But then there are the select few that would still want to do other stuff outside of VTubing.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that likes to dabble. And so even if I was a full-time VTuber, I'd probably still try to like adjunct one class a semester to keep my teaching chops and things like that.
Nice.
I don't know if I could, or getting into the voice acting, or audiobook narration, things outside of just doing streaming and VTubing.
So what you're saying is you're going to become that one VTubing faculty that just like streams into classes rather than like actually goes to them and teaches.
So that's been really interesting over the last year, actually. With I don't know how much you want to go into the pandemic. you know,
We can
but
talk about that it happened. I mean, I don't know if we should talk about
yeah.
other stuff, but
No, but one of the side effects of that was not being able to teach in person.
right,
And so making the jump to VTubing was actually kind of easy because I already had all the tech from teaching from home. I
right,
had my mic, I had my, camera set up. I taught myself how to do broadcasting software so that I could do better online lectures. So, um I'm definitely in that position where I adapted more quickly than a lot of my peers as teachers to teaching in an online environment.
right, definitely. Yeah, I could see. I mean, like I kind of said it as a joke, but I could definitely see a future where there's at least some form of virtual teaching that's like done by teaching personas rather than teachers, if that makes any kind of sense.
It's actually something that some of us in the community have joked about. When I was first joining the community, I ran into several other educators. Um, and we joked about basically making like VTuber Khan Academy.
I like it. I'll be waiting for that. But yeah, just kind of with the pandemic in general, I feel like it was kind of a perfect storm combining the pandemic and just the whole live rabbit hole explosion, just VTubing explosion in general. But that said, now that things are kind of winding down in a lot of places around the world, I'm curious where you think or where you see all this VTuber stuff going. And you can talk personally, but also just, the industry as a whole.
I think, yeah, I totally agree that maybe the pandemic helped fuel the VTuber explosion. A lot more people were home, you know, consuming a lot more online content. I know several students, not necessarily my students, but probably also my students who would take their online class and watch YouTube at the same time. So being able to do that definitely fueled a lot more content creators. I think we'll probably see some slowdown and some kind of market contraction as VTubing will shrink back down a little bit as we return to normalcy. But I think there's enough of a market for it now that it's going to maintain pretty well. And I think it's going to continue to grow as people explore different facets of what they can do as VTubers. And we expand out from mostly doing streaming content into other areas
Yeah,
and treat it as kind of a medium as a whole.
yeah, I'd say I agree with that because I think from my perspective, it's kind of one of those things where it isn't so much. I could see it shrinking down, but it isn't so much that it like exploded and then it's like a parabola where it's going to come back down. I think it just kind of accelerated what was already happening and what was already like going to happen. Just like online industries, I feel like VTubing included are they might plateau a little bit, but they're gonna. This is kind of just going to be the new normal moving forward. At
Yeah,
least that's my
absolutely.
opinion. um,
Definitely. And more people are getting comfortable with the technology behind it. It's going to only get easier with different technological advances and people getting uh being able to ease their way in with basic Vroid models or very cheap solutions for live 2D as they start to emerge and be able to build these personas without spending $1,500 or what have you to get started in that way.
yeah, definitely. You made the joke earlier that probably some of your students were watching VTubers as well, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, I should probably make the admission. I am fortunate enough to be able to work at a desk with a computer and my phone and everything. So I've definitely over the past like 6 months or so, just I'll have like a VTuber on like one screen and then doing my work on the other screen because I mean I'm like I said, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. And also, there's just like these days always a VTuber on. Just at any time, there will always be a stream.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely will put them on when if I'm not doing something that I really have to focus in on, like writing a academic paper. If I'm just reading something, reading through a paper that I'm just kind of looking surface level at, I'll have VTubers on while I'm working and stuff too.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think that's been pretty common lately. There was so I guess that there was a something much earlier. I think when we were talking about content, I had a thought and it just came back to me. With the chill vibes, I was curious, just the kind of future games that you'd like to play, and particularly just the thought that I had was with related to horror games, because I know that's something that gets a lot of reactions, gets the blood pumping, and it's kind of the complete opposite almost of a chill stream, other than like a sweaty stream. So I was curious if
Absolutely.
that might be in your future.
Ooh, that would definitely have to be like one of those subathon goal kind of things for me. I am a big baby when it comes to horror. So I will it would definitely be one of those stretch goal kind of things where I'll do it for the fans kind of thing. But
Do it for the vine.
exactly. But yeah, I don't really watch a lot of horror movies or play much within the horror genre. Um you'll
Gotcha.
hear a lot of yelling and much less chill stream out of me if I do a horror game.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a big baby when it comes to horror, but I just don't like have fun with it. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
if I don't have fun with it, why would I want to do it? It's kind of the thought that I usually end up going with. But
Yeah.
I do know the thing that always kind of gets me thinking about it is that it is good content, because I know I'm always laughing my butt off whenever I'm watching somebody get scared in like the most Resident Evil game. A bunch of people were playing through that, and even though I'd already seen it like 6 times, I would still tune into a streamer streaming it because it'd be funny to watch them react to things.
Exactly. Yeah, there would definitely I'm going to take that sentence again.
No worse.
Blah, 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 blah. Um there's there would definitely be a lot of clippable moments from me playing a horror game. I can assure you that.
It's good that you're at least open to the idea of keeping it as a stretch goal. So I guess kind of related to that, what are future plans that you do know you have, like that I'm not just throwing on you, other than
Oh,
the live 2D?
absolutely. So, I really want to we talked a little bit about the audiobook stuff. I've also really been enjoying practicing some song covers that I want to put out a couple. I did one of the uh, JoJo cover. I did a cover of Bloody Stream from JoJo a
Nice.
little while ago as a Twitter follower goal. Um, with the added bonus that since it took a while for me to get it, it was right around April Fools. So I did a April
Perfect.
Fools cover of it first,
Nice.
where I did it in one of the kind of character voices I do. Um, that was way up here. I did the whole cover like this.
That's
And
amazing.
and I got so many people that were annoyed. They were like, "Oh, I thought this was going to be a real cover."
Oh, you lied to us. How dare you?
Yeah,
It's good that you actually ended up
but
doing the real cover too, to appease the fans.
yeah, and but I've got a couple of other songs I've been working on. Um, to put those out, audiobook, as I mentioned, and the big one that I've been waiting on having my model for is like pop science educational kind of video content. Um, tying video games or like stuff that comes up in VTuber culture back to little scientific snippets.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, I know a lot of your theme is based on like health science facts. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
given your profession.
So I did a kind of a test run as a Twitter thread a while back where I took Gura's and was like, well, how do we know that this is an ah? And like, why do we know that that's an A in English kind of thing? And showed how like the sound waves work and how the different frequencies mesh to recognize it as an ah versus an E, and how our
Wow,
brains kind of dissect that.
that's crazy. Like again, that's something I never would have thought of. And then you see that, and that's probably something that most people don't think of. So that's really cool that you're able to do that.
Yeah. And so the first video I'm working on the script for right now as a teaser is I was playing one of the Pokemon games, and there was a Pokedex entry for Noibat where it said that it can emit any sound frequency. And so the video will be on like what is a sound wave and what's the actual like frequency of sound that we can actually span in air.
Oh man, breaking down Pokemon anatomy. This is getting even more big brain. That's really cool though. I'll definitely be looking forward to that. Is there? So I guess kind of. Well, okay. I'll start with the Pokemon since you mentioned that first. The what is your kind of past with Pokemon, if that makes sense? For example, for me, I started in the first gen actually, so I was an OG Pokemon player, and then I went to third gen, and then stopped, and I haven't touched anything Pokemon since.
Yeah, so my first one was Red. I was a first gen as well. And then I didn't play again until Pearl.
Okay,
And then
that was fourth
I
gen.
played, yeah, that's fourth gen. And then I played Heart Gold, and then I didn't play again until New Snap came out.
Nice. So all over the place.
Yeah, because New Snap was a big nostalgia trigger for me because I loved playing the original Snap back in the day.
That's true. Now that I think about it, I did play. So other than the mainline games, I didn't play a ton of Pokemon stuff. I would say the only two things that come to mind are I did play a little bit of the Pokemon trading card game way back in the day, and like I actually played it. I didn't just like get the cards that because they looked cool, which I know is what a lot of people did, especially when they were younger. But and the other thing that came to mind was Pokemon Coliseum. I don't know if you ever had a chance to play that.
I did not actually. I went from having a access to a Super Nintendo to a PlayStation 1, and I missed the GameCube and the N64.
Gotcha.
So um we actually would rent an N64 to play Snap when I was a kid.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, I didn't have a GameCube like when the GameCube was popular or like when it first came out, if that makes sense. I got it much later, like after I'd already gotten my like Xbox 360. But I did manage to go back and play some of the classics, like Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Pokemon Coliseum and plenty of others. But with Pokemon specifically, with Coliseum, it was kind of like I feel like they've kind of integrated a lot of what made Coliseum cool into the newest Pokemon games. Since
Yeah.
I mean, the main selling point was that it was 3D Pokemon at a time when there was just 2D Pokemon.
Yeah. And I'm starting to dabble a little bit in Sword and Shield off stream, but I haven't
Gotcha.
really played too much of it yet. Um but I'm enjoying the having a 3D world for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely like I said. I haven't played since Gen 3, so it's been fun to watch people play through it again. But I feel like it's funny because even if the games coming out now end up being better than the games that came out then, I have such strong nostalgia for those first Pokemon games. Like Emerald is my favorite, the last game I played in Gen 3. And I have such strong nostalgia for that game that I don't think anything Pokemon wise will ever top it.
Yeah, that's totally legit. I I have a few games that I'm just like super nostalgic for. Um Red is my like go-to. I'll always champion Red as my favorite Pokemon game because it was the first one.
Sense. Did you ever get a chance to play Fire Red? I think it was. It was the quote
No,
unquote remake.
No, I never did play the remake.
Gotcha. I think I want to say that I played it, but I don't, because those technically came out in Gen 3 as well. But
Mhm.
I don't remember having as fond memories of that as I did of the actual first game. Um, so the, I guess, kind of somewhat related to that, is there, do you have a specific game that you would say most drastically changed your life, or like a game that you remember so fondly that it, like, you could say got you into gaming, that along those lines?
So the game that kind of locked me in as a gamer was the original Final Fantasy. So Grandpa Redfang was a big video game collector. And so when I would go visiting, he had like Ataris and Intellivisions and the original NES and
Oh,
Sega. He had like a Sega with the CD and the 32X attachment, and like he was pretty hardcore. Um, and so I used to play his original NES collection, and Final Fantasy One was actually the first game I ever beat.
nice.
And from that point, I was like, okay, I'm sold on this whole video game thing. I can, and just started devouring mostly JRPGs back then. Dragon Quest. I went through like Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, like pretty quick succession when I would be over there.
Nice. Yeah, that's like, it's very interesting to hear that, because that's definitely, I didn't get into JRPGs until long after I was into gaming. Like, I'm trying to think, like, the first true JRPG I played, and it might have been like Final Fantasy 12, 13. I think it was 13. So, like 13 later was when I finally joined the Final Fantasy craze. Have you gotten a chance to play the Final Fantasy 7 remake at all?
No, I haven't played any of the remake. That's on the list of things that I need to get around to playing at some point. Um, and I I tend to play a lot of kind of longer form games because I play so many JRPGs and things like that. And so like I've been playing Monster Hunter, which has a bit of a long tail of playtime on it as they keep rolling out new content. Disco Elysium's taking a while to get through. And so it's hard for me to get new games going sometimes. And so
Feel that.
I'm often spending only a lot of time playing only a couple of games for months at a time. And I fall behind very easily on new games.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, because years ago, younger Solaris, I felt like I would finish games like within a week, and nowadays it's like I feel terrible because it'll take me 2 months to finish a game, and not even necessarily longer form games like you're talking about, just like average length games. I'm just like, I want to get through this, but I have so much other stuff to do. um,
Absolutely. I had back in the day when I was in undergrad, I had like the worst habits, and I would do things like play through the entirety of Star Ocean 2 during exam week. Became a kind
nice.
of tradition as my decompressing while I'm studying sort of thing. And I don't know how I could do that nowadays with how long those games take.
Exactly. The other part of the problem I think I have, and maybe you have this problem as well, is I tend to binge content, if that makes sense. For like Netflix series, I have trouble just like watching 2 episodes a night and then putting it down. Like, if I'm watching something, I'm gonna watch the whole season, or like I'll play through as much of like a game as I possibly can. So I have trouble just like putting things down and letting it rest.
Yeah, that actually is. I'm kind of the same way. I'll like set aside, all right, this weekend I'm going to get through a season of, whatever show it happens to be. And it's like, okay, Saturday and Sunday we're watching, if it's 13 episodes, it'll be like 6 one day, 7 the other kind of thing.
Yeah. Let's see. The was there anything else? I guess kind of related to the Final Fantasy stuff. I know we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but I was curious what your kind of thoughts on Final Fantasy 14 are so far, since I know that's been kind of having a resurgence lately.
Yeah, so I'm having a lot of fun with it again. I played it back in the day when Heaven's Word came out, so that was 2015 or so. Um, and then grad school got in the way, and so I put it down so that I could actually pass my classes. Um,
Understandable.
but I have always kind of just dabbled in MMOs. I played a little bit of Vanilla WoW when it first came out, a little bit of Final Fantasy 11 back in the day. 14 was the one that grabbed me the most. And so it was hard to put down back then. And I just kind of never went back to it. But now with Endwalker coming out, um, which kind of the plan is it kind of ties up the entire story for this arc of the MMO. Um, it's a good reason for me to go back and fill in all of the missing expansion packs that I never got around to. And I love the aesthetic of 14. Like, I legitimately could very easily just log in and fish for a couple of hours and just enjoy the view. Like,
Nice.
it's a very pretty game to play. But the story is also really compelling as you go along. The original, like Realm Reborn, was kind of bland, where I got to now towards the end of Heaven's Word, it's getting into a lot more like political intrigue and bringing in a lot of other elements that kind of spice up the storyline and make it hard to stop playing. Like I think I just happened to be at like the perfect spot to stop where it was still a little too bland. But if I was where I am now, I'd have had a hard time quitting. So
Gosh, well, it's good that I guess it worked out in the long run. Getting back into it now.
so
Talking about
yeah,
Final
and
Fantasy. Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say it's definitely helps to have like friends within the VTuber community that are playing it and talking about, you know, putting together maybe an FC, free company, a guild for VTubers so that we can do content together. And I've seen a lot of veteran 14 players reaching out to people who are trying out the game for the first time and being like, oh, we can collab or work, you know, work with you through early content. And a lot of just very friendly collaboration has been very cool to see.
Yeah, I really like that. I think I admittedly I don't have too much experience with it at the moment, but I think one of my favorite things about VTubing in general is just kind of the community building. Because like I've always thought it would be really fun, not necessarily in Final Fantasy 14, because admittedly I don't play, but in some other games where there was like guilds or clans or groups that to build that up. And I never really had a group big enough. Like I have my group of friends, sure, but that's usually only like 4 to 5 people, not, you know, these massive groups of 50 to 100 people that could fill out a whole clan. So it's really cool to see kind of VTubers come together in that aspect.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of um the community and the collaboration and a lot of positivity and support in the community. And that's all been really great to see. Um and that it, even when there is the drama side of things, that there's still large swaths of the community that are not involved in it and kind of just keep to doing the positive and the collaborative stuff and don't let it drag the whole community down.
Yeah. Kind of related to the collab stuff. As we've kind of established, you like to dabble in all sorts of different things. So I'm curious. I won't necessarily have you throw anybody under the bus, but if there's like a favorite collab or a favorite game that you've been playing lately. I know you obviously do your Monster Hunter stuff weekly. So I don't want anybody to feel bad if Doc doesn't say that you're his favorite collab. That's why I'll give him an out and just say like favorite game that you like to collab in.
Um, my favorite stream right now is probably the Monster Hunter streams, especially getting to cycle some of the other VTubers in the community through and hang out with them on stream is a great experience. As far as like general collab idea. I really, really enjoyed that voice acting collab. So branching out and doing some more of those, finding some other games to play, whether it's older, JRPGs that don't have voice acting, or some visual novels, and get a group of VTubers together to voice act them. Like, I'd really love to do some more work in that area.
I was gonna say the main voice acting one I've seen, other than your own content, would be. I feel like every now and then I'll see a collab of Doki Doki Literature Club, voiced by different VTubers. I always see that one.
Yeah. The trick there is, so many of us know the twist nowadays.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, it's only really funny because of the voices that people end up doing, because the story itself is kind of, we already know what it is. Although now I think about it, I think they might have actually just announced like a definitive edition for the game or something that's supposed to like add new content. I only saw like the announcement headline, so admittedly I did not click the link, so I don't know what it's actually about. But
I saw the headline too, but I haven't actually looked at what they added or changed about it.
So we'll have to, maybe we'll have to look into doing a voice acting for that. The related to the collabing stuff, I don't know if, admittedly I don't know too much about this, but that's why I'm gonna ask about it. There's like a VTuber wrestling federation that you're a part of that I saw, and I'm kind of curious about. Would you be willing to talk about that for a little bit?
Absolutely. So pro wrestling is kind of my guilty pleasure. I loved it as a kid growing up. I used to watch a lot of WWE, and then I stopped watching it as a early teen. And when I was doing my PhD and writing my dissertation, I went back to watching pro wrestling again, because it was one of those things where I could kind of zone out and not think too much, and just kind of enjoy the athletic spectacle of it and the goofy characters.
Nice.
And so when I saw Jacob Storms doing VTuber Wrestling Federation, I was like, oh, this is a really neat idea to kind of bring awareness of other VTubers in the community. And I was watching one of their streams and fell asleep watching it, and had a dream about my character in the Federation, along with Lockfang, who's another smaller kind of our size VTuber, starting out in the last month or so. And because I watched wrestling back in the day, there was a tag team of The Rock and Mick Foley called the Rock and Sock Connection, and my brain locked onto it and was like, oh, the Lock and Doc Connection in the dream.
Oh man.
And I was like, right, I woke up and I'm like, I've got to tweet about this. Like, this is just too good. And Jacob Storms saw it and was like, okay, well, what's your finisher gonna be?
This is happening now.
Like, oh, yeah. I'm like, I just rattled off. I was at work and I just saw the tweet come in. I was like, let's just spitball, like, this finisher, we'll call it that for theming. This finisher, we'll call it that for theming, kind of thing. And I gave him some finishers and some other moves, and he's like, all right, you've done half my work for me. I'm just gonna put you in the league. And so it's been a lot of fun to watch. He's got multiple like championship belts, and does a lot of like gimmick matches and stuff with ladders and tables and stuff. And it's just, it's neat to see the different personalities, especially when they come in chat during the stream, and will like cut promos on each other. And it's just really just good fun to enjoy. And
nice. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, like, it's just kind of goes back to the different sides of docs, because when I initially started getting into your content, I never in a million years would have picked like Doc Redfang wrestling content. It just never would have come to me.
No, that's definitely one of those things that I don't think my persona necessarily would suggest. But
So slightly, somewhat related to that, is there, like, you've talked a bit about your teaching, obviously, but are there any other activities that you enjoy doing outside of the atelier, kind of outside of streaming in general?
yeah, so I'm big on learning new stuff and messing around with new technology. I like to learn. I've been teaching myself some like computer programming stuff so that I can make new stream assets. And then outside of that, I really enjoy going swinging the pendulum from one side to the other. So from wrestling, one of my favorite things is to go to tea houses and you'd like bring a book and just relax at a tea house.
I'm just picturing a very buff Doc Redfang, like sitting at a small little tea house table, just sipping some tea.
Yep, with a little tray with some finger sandwiches and a scone.
Perfect.
That is those are actually the two things that I picked up in my PhD program was going back to watching wrestling and finding a tea house to go and relax at when I was done working for the day. And probably somewhere down the line, once I retire from teaching and graduate from VTubing, I'd probably love to run a tea house at some point.
Oh wow.
And other than that, I love going and hanging out in nature and just kind of going and vibing and relaxing and hitting that kind of meditative state out there and connecting with nature.
That's really cool. Have you gotten a chance to do much of that, given the recent pandemic and everything?
Not so much lately. And the where I live is very urban and there's not a lot of green space, so I have to travel a bit to go do it. And I haven't been as good about it lately, but I'm looking forward to that now. As things kind of get back to normal, being able to take some time and take some long weekends to go get a cabin somewhere and relax. Things like
Nice.
that.
That sounds really cool. I know some stream. It's kind of like varies heavily based on the streamer, but I'm somewhat curious since you're talking about it. Have you ever considered content like, how do I describe this? Like real life content, but just like your voice. Like for example, I can think of as like a Hachama cooking, where like she's actually cooking on stream. So I was just kind of thinking of like you doing like nature walks and explaining things or something. So it's like it's technically you wouldn't be on camera per se, but it's not like streaming content.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but that's definitely something that I could consider doing.
I was just
I could see myself.
curious. Since
Yeah,
you were
I could definitely see doing some nature walk video kind of things. That would be cool.
trying a different teas. Now that I think about it, bringing up the tea house did make me curious. Would you say you're more of a tea drinker than a coffee drinker? Then do you
I
like
am
coffee at
definitely
all?
I am not much for coffee. I am definitely more of a tea drinker. I'm actually having a nice strawberry hibiscus sangria tea right now as we're
Oh,
talking.
I like tea as well, but I usually just kind of stick with the basic stuff like Earl Grey, black, green.
Mhm.
That I usually go with the crazy flavors.
Like
I'm
I
always
like a nice fruit flavor with my teas a lot of time.
I've been wanting to try a bit more interesting stuff. I think like a habit I always tell myself I want to get into, but I have yet to do so, is to start drinking some more herbal teas kind of before bed because I've heard that that's potentially good for you.
Yeah.
And I also
I
don't like coffee at all.
Yeah, coffee. I drank it in high school and then pretty much never again since then. I'll have one a couple of times a year, but I'm very much more a tea drinker.
Nice. It's always a fun question to ask because I know a lot of people that are very passionate about their coffee. Shall we say? So
For sure.
I don't always meet a ton of the people that are prefer tea. I don't really know how to segue into this, admittedly, but I did want to talk a bit about E3 because I remembered that it was happening like Friday, and it's happening this weekend. So I remembered it happening like a day before, and I haven't really been
Right.
paying too much attention to it. But I was kind of curious because speaking from for me, just for a moment, is that I used to be E3 used to be like one of my highlights of the summer, like at least as far as content wise stuff I'd want to like watch and do. Like I used to like watch all of the days of E3. I would make a big list of all the games that I wanted. The trailers were so cool. And nowadays, like I'll maybe look up a little bit of news after it happened, but I don't really watch the streams anymore. I was kind of curious, like if you had any similar thoughts on E3 or if it's always just kind of a background thing for you.
I kind of have made the same transition where I was like the week before was just super hyped. I'm like, oh, I hope I get to see this. I get to see that. I get to see that. And now it's kind of like, oh, cool. News is rolling out. I'll wait for someone to aggregate most of it and kind of look through it there. I did watch the Summer Games Fest presentation on, was that Thursday?
I think so, yeah.
And I enjoyed a lot of the games that they were showing off there. But I don't watch nearly as much of it like live as I used to.
Yeah, I know, especially with the pandemic, there were talks about it just not ever coming back. So it's kind of funny because, like, even though I don't really watch it that much, I feel like I would still be kind of sad if it goes away completely. Like, it's nice to have this big bunch of news kind of just all coming out and getting hyped about certain games.
For sure. I think the thing I miss the most, if it completely goes away though, is Devolver Digital's little performance art piece every year.
Oh man, yeah. I forgot that they always go like they go weird with it. Of
It's so
course,
good. I love them so much.
yeah, it's funny because now I'm thinking about it. Like, if the floor show itself kind of stayed the same, I wouldn't necessarily mind them getting rid of a lot of the performances. The Devolver Digital one would be fine, but I'm just having flashbacks to like Ubisoft conferences where they would bring like a live concert out on stage. And it's like, this is cool, but I also don't care about this. Like, I'm not there, so I can't, this isn't like good content for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um yeah, that's why nowadays if I watch any of the presentations, it's after the fact and I can kind of like jump through and be like, where's the next trailer? Where's the next trailer?
Yeah, exactly. Just the trailers. That's all I want. Just give me a big string of trailers, and we'll be good. uh, Related to that, I guess, are there any games that you've seen or any games that you would like to see in the news? That by the time this podcast releases, it'll actually I've already been mostly over, but for us, E3 is still right in the middle right now, so there might be stuff we're missing.
So far what I've seen, I really liked what was it called? Tribes of Midgard. It's kind of like a Norse themed Diablo-esque kind of hack and slash game. That looked really interesting to me. I'm intrigued by Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which is like Borderlands spin-off with more
I
of
was
a
gonna
D&D
say like that
theme.
sounds like Borderlands, but I'm not 100%. I have admittedly, like I said, I haven't seen too much, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's the same group doing as Borderlands, but it's more like D&D aesthetic. So that'll be interesting to see where they take that. Um and I'm looking out for more info on the Diablo 2 remaster.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's right. Yeah.
so I will probably binge that real hard when that comes out eventually. So
Nice. Yeah, Diablo is one of those
and
series that I just kind of missed. Like, I don't think I would dislike it per se, but I just never really got into it. And then there was the whole Blizzard controversy a while back, and I kind of just discount all Blizzard games at this point. I think the
you
best
know
way I can
that
describe it is like I have so many games that I want to play that I will take any criteria, no matter how much it actually really matters, to trim down the list of games. So I just like ignore Blizzard games.
that is totally fair. My like primitive monkey brain likes big number go up.
Nice.
So,
I play
you know,
Destiny. I feel that.
so like min maxing my like wizard in Diablo 3 so that I could have like 7 meteors go off when I cast a spell, sort of thing. And or same reason I play like Disgaea. It's like, oh
Oh
look, that
man,
now
that's a classic. Yeah,
get up into like millions and billions of damage per hit.
yeah, yeah. I definitely get the appeal. Like I said, it's just I just never really got into it. Some of my friends played a lot of it, and they also got really into another game that was like I guess you can call it a Diablo clone. I think it was called Grim Dawn. I don't know if you've
Yep.
ever played or heard of that.
I've seen streams of it, but I haven't played it myself.
Yeah, I just like to say, like again, I didn't really get into that with them, but they seem to have a lot of fun with it in different times.
Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think other games I'd like to see some info about. The Great Ace Attorney from Capcom.
Oh man, yeah,
I'm excited that's coming over. I'm a big Ace Attorney fan. Trials and Tribulations, the third one, is like probably in my top 5 games, sort of
nice.
thing.
Wow. I know the series, but admittedly, I haven't played any of the games.
So getting more of that'll be good. And the new The World Ends With You. I don't know if you ever played the original on DS.
No, I don't think so.
It's very Japanese RPG. I'm interested in seeing what they do with that, because that one came out a decade ago and they're just making a sequel kind of thing. And Rune Factory 5. I am a big Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley, Rune Factory buff. So getting a new
Nice.
game for the first time in a probably close to a decade for that will be nice.
Yeah, that does sound really cool. Like it's funny because I always see people playing Stardew, and I've never even really had the thought of like, man, Stardew actually came out a long time ago. Like not crazy long time, but I think it's been what, like at least 5 years.
Yeah, at least at this point. And I'm amazed at what a big success it was for Eric Barone. I'm so happy that everybody latched onto it and it took off the way it did, because they put so much work into it.
I notice, and it's probably, I mean, you did mention like all the types of games you're into, so it kind of makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily mention these, but it's funny that you haven't really noticed any of like the big heavy hitters that I would have necessarily expected a lot of people to bring up, because like I know some of my friends have been really interested in Elden Ring. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's like I don't remember the company that's making it, but I know it's like the big thing is that it's being like written by George R. R. Martin. So like it's a lot of news has been coming out about it recently.
Yeah, it's a From Software game, because it's
Gotcha.
the Dark Souls people. And it looks super interesting, but I'm real bad at Dark Souls.
I feel that, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm not that super interested in myself. I just like I said, it's like I think it's the game I've heard the most about over the past few days, which is why I brought it up. And then of course
Look forward to watching other people stream it.
There you go. Yep, that's a good one. It's other people can suffer. I'll just watch. Other stuff is like I don't know if we're expecting too much info about it at this particular E3, but like the next Bethesda game, I think Starfield is supposed to come out next year. It's like is the rumored date, and that's going to be their next game.
Yeah, I'd love to see some more info on that. Yeah,
and of course, there's Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Fallout probably won't be till like 2030 at this point, but
yeah, and I'm trying to think if there's any bigger name titles. I wouldn't necessarily characterize myself as kind of a gaming hipster, but I definitely don't play as many like AAA titles as a lot of people do.
I don't as much these days. Like there was definitely a time where like all I played were AAA titles, it feels like, but these days I don't. Like I was one of the ones who suffered through the beginning of Cyberpunk, though admittedly I didn't like it's mostly a joke because I actually didn't really like hate Cyberpunk that much. I thought it was fun. I do think it was not as good as it could have been, but I was also fortunate enough to play it on PC, and I didn't really have a ton of technical issues. So
Yeah,
that,
I know the consoles had a field day trying to get anything to work.
yeah, that was probably a big part of the problem. But yeah, I can't think of any other particularly big game announcements. But like I said, these days I don't pay as much attention beforehand as I used to. I usually just get all the news after the fact. So it will be kind of fun to go back through and see what gets announced over these next couple days. All fun
Yeah,
stuff to
I'm
stream in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure I've missed something. Trying to come up with some things I'm interested in, and even some bigger titles that I just haven't thought of.
Yeah, I know. That reminds me. I know personally a title that I have been like all over the place about is and it's because it's been all over the place is Halo Infinite. Because for me, I guess the best way I can put it is Halo's kind of like one of my core games. It's what got me into the Xbox console and kind of what solidified me into gaming. There are definitely some PC games that came before that, and I have strong nostalgia for those. But I think Halo is one of the bigger ones that really got me into just gaming as a whole. And the way Halo Infinite's been going, it's been delayed like twice. It was supposed to come out like I think the end of last year, maybe even
Yeah,
earlier than that, and it's not supposed to come out till the end of this year now. So I'll be curious to see if they do any like announcements at E3 for that.
I hope so. Like, if it gets delayed too many more times, it's going to be the new Duke Nukem Forever.
Oh man.
But I played Halo and Halo 2 with friends. I'm not great at shooters. Uh my nickname was Decoy for a reason.
Perfect.
So
My
they're fun, but my skills don't match the enjoyment level I get out of them.
yeah, I like that. My friends have we call so whoever is going to go out and be the decoy, we call them thought bait. That is that we send out the thought bait to just take the enemy fire whenever they feel like they can't shoot back. We just send them out. But
Yep.
yeah, I definitely haven't been into
I was
shooters as
good for that.
much. Oh, that does remind me of Battlefield 6. Was it Battlefield 6? No, well, it's Battlefield like 2043 or something like that, I think. Is
Right.
that
Yeah.
had a big announcement. I remember that now. I have to keep an eye on that given the interesting release of Battlefield 5. Well, I think we're kind of winding down here. There were two more questions I wanted to ask before I let you go back into the world. Before I force you to leave the outer space galaxy we're in right now. If there was no limitations on time, money, and like it was guaranteed to be successful, what kind of content, like, or is there a specific type of piece of content that you would like to make? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Probably like really scale up the like science education videos, get some really good editing, get some animators involved, and really start working on the kind of pre-produced and not just live streaming content, getting more into that stuff and using that as one of those ways to push the VTubing as a medium out into new areas. I'd love to really kind of push the boundaries of making informational content in that way.
Okay, yeah. So that's like the Pokemon Soundwave stuff, kind of is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You'd like to scale that
Yeah.
up. Okay.
I'd love to be able to scale that up a lot and, you know, go kind of game theory style with it and have like research support to be able to churn them out more frequently, stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I don't know if I'd necessarily say I had a similar idea, but some of my early inspiration for Solaris was actually the Kurzgesagt videos. I don't know if you know what those are.
I love those. Yeah.
And I was like, I really love those. So like, I took a lot of my art style inspiration from them, and it's like I feel like it'd be really cool if I could do some kind of space like education related content to what they do, but I don't know how to do it at the moment. It's basically the best way I could put it. But I'll keep thinking about it.
Yeah. Just one more step towards the VTuber Academy.
Exactly. There we go. We'll have all sorts of we'll have the space branch, and then we'll have the health sciences wing. I like it.
Yep.
And then so of course the question that I like to end off with is, if you could leave the audience with one thing, piece of advice, just a happy message, what would it be?
Probably just to go at your own pace, have an idea of where you want to be eventually, but don't fret so much on getting there quickly. Do a little better each time as you kind of grow and pursue whatever you're working on. It's life's an iterative process. So don't expect to get everything the first time through, and just make sure that you keep a good constructive outlook as you take on the world.
Nice. I really like that. Yeah, I think that can apply to everybody in general, but it also really applies to us aspiring VTubers. So, I would like to thank you very much for being on the show here, Doc.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure.